what's up, Shadowverse soldiers? Before we get into it, I wanted to talk about a new tournament that I'm hosting, the Olivia's Webcam Tournament. It's a $20 entry fee, and it's a best of 3 Swiss rounds. First place gets a Dark Angel Olivia, while second place gets 45, third place gets 20, and fourth gets 15. We'll be doing it on November 4th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll put a link in the description below, and I will hope to see you guys there. What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers? In this video, I'm going to be doing something very different from the others. It's going to be more educational so you can figure out what things do in Shadowverse. So let's all transfer from being Shadowverse soldiers into Shadowverse scholars. And I will personally enroll you into what's something I like to call Enverse Academy. What is up, my Shadowverse scholars, and welcome to the first episode of Enverse Academy. So this is going to be a very different standpoint from other videos I've done. We usually look into the competitive aspect of things, but today we are going to be doing more of an educational video for people who don't know what they're doing and for future reference of, hey, what the fuck does this deck do? Or what's going on? I don't know what these cards do. This is the video to go to. So go ahead and get your paper and pencils. And let's go ahead and take some notes on what Runecraft can do. So Runecraft is all about using spells. That's what, the deck usually does, is use spells or use any sort of amulets to get their way and then play big monsters in the late game. So the first deck we're going to talk about is D-Shift. If anybody doesn't know, Dimension Shift is a very good deck for Runecraft. It's also known as Isabelle has always been represented as a Dimension Shift type deck. So if you don't know what D-Shift means, it means Dimension Shift. This card says when this is played, you banish 10 spells in your cemetery, and this card costs 7 play points to play. Take another turn after this one. So, a little summary, they're going to have a whole bunch of spells in the cemetery. They're going to play some big monsters that will have summoning sickness when they're played, but D-Shift says you take another turn, so they're not going to have summoning sickness. So you're looking at lethal if this happened. But usually if they do Dimension Shift, you're probably losing, but the chances are high, but never zero. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the next part of it. So the pros and cons of D-Shift. Pros, it's a OTK, one turn kill deck. If you don't know the terminology, the Merlin and recycling of the deck is very good. It draws a lot. The other thing is it has a healthy hand. So anytime you're going to ask a D-Shift player, or I guess you're just going to know that it's Runecraft player, how many cards they have in hand. It's not going to be 2, it's not going to be 3, it's going to be the maximum amount of 7, like at every point in time, if not more. You're going to look at your opponent and you're going to see that they're drawing a lot and you're going to be a little scared. It's intimidating, but don't be afraid, because there's a way. The cons, unfortunately, for playing Runecraft D-Shift is the answers. You need to draw into your answers. If you don't have any answers on the field, or no way to deal with any of your opponent's board state, it really feels bad. It's very slow. There's no fast, aggressive play style for Runecraft. You have to sit and wait. There's no turn 1, turn 2 plays that's really game-changing or threatening. So that's the slow aspect of it. It's draw dependent. That's another thing. You have to draw into your answers. If you don't draw into your cards that help you in the early game, then it's GG's at that point. And it feels really, really bad. The other con is that this deck thrives on mid to late game. And this current meta game as of set 2 right now is not a mid to late game sort of area of effect. But at the same time, you do have the OTK, Merlin, and healthy hands. So even though the cons do outweigh the pros, it's still a good and fun deck to play, and there's a chance you can top with it at a regional or even any sort of locals that you can go to. So this deck isn't boo-boo. It's okay. It's okay. Let's go ahead and get into the first set of cards. So we were talking about Merlin and recycling earlier. So Merlin is a very good OG for the deck. She lets you search for any spell in your deck and reveal it and add it to your hand. At any point at turn 3, you're going to be like, okay, well, I have a Merlin in my hand. In reality, I have another spell. I can look through my deck and, it can be clutch. Now for Evolve, on the other hand, you can select a spell that costs 3 play points or less in your cemetery and play for 0 points. So this is what I mean for the recycling. So even though she has an Evolve 2, you can spend 3 and play her, get a spell, and then use that spell, or if you haven't already used a spell, and then you can play the Evo Merlin and just play it again. You see what I mean? That's what I mean for the recycling. You're doing 2 spells for the price of, like 1 or 2. Like, it feels really good. Next, we'll get into Flame Destroyer. So this is the big body of the deck. So the whole premise of Flame Destroyer is he has a spell card that says Spell Chain 5. This card costs 3 less to play. Spell Chain 10, it costs 6 less instead. Spell Chain 15, it is free. It costs 9 less. He has Rush, so he can definitely deal with things that ward, and it's very good. Now, you're asking, hey Sparta, what does Spell Chain mean? And we'll definitely get into that. And we'll get into it right now, actually. So, fanfare, let's look at Lightning Shooter. Alright, you select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. Spell Chain 5, you deal 4 damage instead. Spell Chain 10, you deal 2 damage to that follower's leader. Now, let's figure out what Spell Chain means. If you have at least 5 spells in your cemetery, perform Spell Chain 5. Then, if you have at least 10 spells, perform Spell Chain 10. So you can still do both with this card. So spells being in your cemetery, that goes to your Spell Chain, not amulets. Make sure they're spells. So if you have 5 or 10 spells, you do whatever the requirement is for Spell Chain 5 or 10 or whatever number it may be. So, you're wondering, what are your spells for Runecraft? We have Wind Blast, Sorcery Cache, and Fiery Embrace and Fate's Hand. So, Wind Blast also has another text that says, okay, you do 2 damage, but if you have Spell Chain 10, and that's usually the good number, is Spell Chain 10, that's usually what it goes to. You deal 4 damage instead. So if you have 10 spells in the cemetery, you deal 4 damage. Another card that helps is also Sorcery Cache. You can look at the top 4, and then reveal a spell, and then you can put another spell into your cemetery along with Sorcery Cache. So that's 2 spells in the cemetery. Fire Embrace also has the Spell Chain effect with Spell Chain 10. It deals 3 damage to the enemy's follower, the follower's enemy leader, and then you can select the enemy follower on the field and destroy it. Very clutch. Fate's Hand, it's one of those cards that I was telling you about Runecraft having that healthy hand. You can spend 3 to draw 2 cards, and then Spell Chain 10, you recover 1 play point. So it's at Spell Chain 10, it's a spend 2, draw 2. Very, very good. Alright, so let me go ahead and get into the game plan of Runecraft. D-Shift. So there's this card, Penguin Wizard, that you can discard a spell card and then draw a card. So there's also this card that's in the neutral class that's a spell that says when this card is discarded, you draw another card. So imagine you're pitching with Penguin Wizard with a Trail of Light. You discard that to draw another card. Trail of Light's discarded, so you draw 2 cards. You see where I'm getting at with this filter? Now, the Evolve of Penguin also says, on Evolve, you refresh this card. So instead of him being engaged from discarding a spell, you can refresh him, and then you can do it all over again. And if you have another Trail of Light, that's 2 extra cards, baby. So you're drawing crazy in this deck. So you keep filtering these cards, and you can 100% get to your game plan. But let's talk about the new cards that came out in Set 2. As of Set 2, these are the new cards that help you with D-Shift. So let's talk about Craig first. We'll skip over Witch Bolt and we'll get back to it. So Craig, when you play him, you draw a card and you discard a card. So it's just like Penguin, but a little better. Because Craig just says you draw a card, and then if it's a spell card, you didn't lose any cards that turn. And if you discard a Trail of Light, that also helps, and you draw another card, so it helps you. Now let's get back to Witch Bolt. You select an enemy follower on the field and deal 5 damage, and if there's an Evolve follower on your field, you draw a card. So the best thing about Witch Bolt is that it deals 5 damage to any follower, especially if they don't have aura. 5 is literally the main point of every card in this deck. Every follower has 5 defense, and 9 times out of 10, any follower that just either draws you a card or just spams out one body or maybe another one. I'm looking at you, Floor Fencer. has less than 5 defense. There's no way that any follower that does something not too crazy to have less than 5 defense. But the whole point of it is you can evolve Merlin, and you can use Witch Bolt on something. And since Merlin is evolved, and you can use Witch Bolt from your cemetery, you can draw a card just because you evolve Merlin and use Witch Bolt, and you got rid of a body. So that's very, very good. Next, we'll move on to Rhinewind. You select an unevolved follower on the field and return it to your owner's hand. And then their spell chain 10, you can put on the top of their owner's deck instead, so they know what they're going to draw next turn. So this is what I'm talking about for spell chain 10. You know, you get max bonuses for discarding spells, and then, you know, Merlin helping you to, you know, possibly get something from your deck and then putting in the cemetery with Craig or the Penguin. And it's just helpful. Now, let's talk about the new techie card. If you've seen my last video of me playing Runecraft, I was talking about Daria. Okay, Daria says discard your hand and put the top card of your deck into your EX area. Repeat this until your EX area is full. While this card is on your field, include both spells and Runecraft followers in your cemetery while counting your spell chain. Very, very good if you have not reached a certain amount of spell chain. Daria basically says, if you've pitched, you know, you got rid of your hand. So if you had a 6, 7+ hand, you got rid of everything, and now everything in your cemetery that's Runecraft followers and spells count to your spell chain. It's very, very good. Let's go ahead and get into the good matchups. All right, so these three, don't flame me for having this this opinion, but for the early game, how Abysscraft is looking right now, you definitely have control over the little bodies, and 900%. If you can control up till turn 5 or 6, you're definitely in for the winning. Because if you control them for that long, they don't have any more answers. Now, Erica and Rowan for the other hand, Dragoncraft and Swordcraft. Now, that's a little more controversial for speech. Now, the thing about we'll go into Swordcraft. So the thing about Swordcraft is that they have the low and small bodies. Now, if they're focused on the small bodies, you definitely have a higher chance of winning. But right now, as I've said too, Leonidas is the thing, and if you can't resolve the Leonidas, well, if you let the Leonidas resolve, and it doesn't get dealt with next turn, there's no way you can handle all those bodies as having a problem. They're just going to be sitting there getting +3/+3 and having rush, and they're just going to be a problem because they're way bigger than they need to, and there's no way for you to deal with them. Now, Dragoncraft, on the other hand, has a huge curve. They won't do anything for turn 1, but as of turn 2, if they hit the Dragon's Oracle and they ramp, then it's definitely going to be a problem because they're going to be playing ahead of you. And even though your deck is slow, they kind of hit a bit of an aggro point because 9 times out of 10, when they hit the Dragon's Oracle, they're going to have Forte, they're going to have Shenlong, all these big bodies that help them out and deal damage to you. So I'm going to say that Dragoncraft is a good matchup because if you can deal with them, that's the thing about Runecraft. You have to deal with these things. If you're able to deal with them, these are good matchups. If you have the removal, these are good matchups because you get there, you can do what you need to do, and get out of there. Now, speaking of doing what you need to do, Sparta, what things can I do besides the certain spells that I have? Now, and that's removal. Speaking of removal, there are things called board wipes. If you don't know them before, they basically get rid of the whole field. But in Shadowverse, as a board wipes, you basically can use Alchemical Ore or Mithril Golem. I am more of a fan of Mithril Golem, but Alchemical Ore says deal 4 damage to each follower on the field, and then Mithril Golem says deal 3 damage to each follower on the field. But if you have Spell Chain 7, that Spell Chain word again, guys, listen up. Deal 5 damage instead. If you have Spell Chain 15, deal 5 damage to each enemy leader instead. So if you have 7 spells in the cemetery, you're going to be doing 5 damage to every follower on the field. And basically, like I said before, if any follower is not doing anything too crazy, you're dealing 5 damage to it and you're destroying it. That's the one thing I love about it. So board wipes definitely help with these matchups, especially against Abysscraft and Erica's Swordcraft, with them spamming out little bodies, and then Mithril Golem says, alright, well, do it again. You have to do it again. Next, let's talk about the bad matchups. Alright, so that's Havencraft and Forestcraft. So, we're going to talk about Havencraft. So Havencraft says, alright, well, I'm also a control deck, so I'm also going to slow you down as well. And the fact that you're not doing anything doesn't help against Havencraft either. So, if this is the Statute Seraph line, they're going to hit 6, and they're going to play their Amulet, and it's going to go up. If you do not have the answers before that Amulet hits 4, you're not going to win, because that is your biggest counter right there, is Heavenly Aegis. It's not a very good day to sit there and have Heavenly Aegis look you in the face, and you're like, well, I can't do anything, so you proceed to lose. Now, on Forestcraft, on the other hand, we're going to talk more of the control build, because the control build is really what hits you with the Rose Queen. So, you can try your best to get rid of Rose Queen, but unfortunately, you can get rid of her, but that doesn't get rid of all the Thorn Bursts that are in the EX area that she's going to burn you for 3 each time. So you're going to take a lot of damage that you can't really interact with. And also, like I've said before, there's so many decks that can just answer you, so it does feel bad, but these decks right here are really the strongest, and it feels really, really bad. So, here are some tech options to, help you feel better about the matchups. We have Angelic Snipe that deals 2 damage to an enemy follower. We have Surefire Bullet that came out in this most recent set, and it deals 3 damage regularly, but if it's an Evolve follower, it does 4. And then there's Fire Chain. I'd say that this is a very good card to pick up for Runecraft. You select between 2 enemy followers in the field and deal 3 damage divided between them. So you can deal 2 damage to something and then 1 damage to something else. And you have another one in your hand, you can do 1 to that one that didn't die, and then 2 to the other one. So you're basically getting rid of 2 units. It feels good, especially in the early game. And I feel like this card is slept on, is Runeblade Summoner. So, Spell Chain 5, the Spell Chain, give this follower +4/+4, so she'll be a 5/5. And then if you have Spell Chain 10, she has Storm. Alright, so you remember when, guys, I was talking about Havencraft, sitting on 6 and not doing anything? This is a good card against Havencraft. This gives you the body that you need to swing 5. And if you've watched my previous video, 5 is a dangerous number. And you know what I said, 5 is, the crazy number that doesn't do too much. But Runeblade Summoner, on the other hand, she's a 5/5 with Storm, with Spell Chain 10, of course. So she's swinging 5 every time. 4 attacks from her, and the game's over. And you can run 3 of her in your deck. So that's all you need. You need 1 to connect, and then you need 2 more to connect, and then 1 more, and that's it. Especially if they're not, healing or whatnot. But like I said in Havencraft, it's a different one. We'll get into that into the future, but Runeblade Summoner is definitely the GOAT when it comes to the Haven matchup. She's a very good body. Alright, so a review of everything we've talked about. So this is still D-Shift. It's not very consistent, but you do have a good hand size, and you're drawing all the spells that you need. You can also filter the spells that you don't need right now, and you can draw hopefully better spells. But, just because they're in the cemetery doesn't mean they can't be used. So that means Merlin is still live and accessible. The other bad thing is, it's very slow. A deck that definitely can get under you will definitely get under you. And if you don't check them or answer them, then you're in a very, very bad spot. So, Runecraft is one of those decks that are like, alright, so I'm going to try my best. I'm going to make the best decisions that are best for me at the moment in time, and sometimes that can hurt you because other decks have better late game and better mid game stuff than you. So you're only using what you have, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I do everything as an overview with a grade system. That's what we're going to be doing for Enverse Academy. So I will give Runecraft D-Shift an A. I'd give it an A+ too, but we're just going to leave it as an A. Runecraft D-Shift definitely can get there. You just have to make sure you have answers. Tweak your deck to what the meta calls. It definitely is up there for a top contender. You definitely could get first place. You just have to play correctly, and you have to make sure you draw the right things. So, but that's why it's an A and not an S, because it's not a super consistent deck. You have to be so dependent on what you draw, and even though you can shuffle your deck as many times as you want to, it's always still RNG. So, but they have good spells, good monsters, but not better than the other monsters in the other class, unfortunately. So we're still going to give Runecraft an A because we love Isabel so much and that it means so much to me. Well, thank you guys for coming to class. 100% like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know how I did. I 100% like doing these videos for you guys, and make sure you comment and see how I did, because I would love to see your guys' feedback. And if you didn't learn anything from Runecraft, let me know. If I missed something, let me know. And make sure you guys are safe in whatever you do for the rest of the day and for the rest of the year. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
I gave you all my love, baby, my heart is cold when you're around. You warm it up, liquid gold, baby, yeah, you warm it up, liquid gold, baby, and my affection, all that paper you wasted. Take my love.